How do, guys? Back on the old pit site. It's a bit windy today, so I'll probably have to stay down the bottom end. The boy's wandering about soon. Weekend coming, 2 vlogs. Sunday I'm going to vlog the coroner's court. A few people have asked me to do that and expand on it, which I will. All about deaths in custody and the like, and the reason that sometimes they may come across as having been dodgy. Saturday, I'm going to put together a few funny stories. Well, I think they're funny. You know what I'm saying? Today, something that makes me smile, other than steak, fish and chips and the like. Stephen, our lass, my daughter, some of your comments, all good. Nobby Nobbler, talked about this guy before, very private guy. I'd never use his name. I worked with him on K-Wing. I worked with him 3.5 years, and having had a think, as me and young Stephen were walking down here, in 3.5 years, I don't think I ever made him a brew, and he made me plenty. But there you go. He was probably the last person on K-Wing who sort of accepted me. Straight out of training, must have been 6 months. I worked with him, but it must have been at least 6 months before we sort of connected. But when we did, bar a couple of others who I equally enjoyed working with on K-Wing. Stevie, where are you? Sit down, kid. Good boy, stay there. Say hi. Say hi. Hi, guys. Yeah, man. One of my favourite people to work with. We had a laugh. We had a great team. Back then we did the job properly. If I went to the toilet, I'd tell him, and he'd do the same. You might think that's a big jobs with, or a bit jobs with. K-Wing was a fractious, exciting, scary, loud, noisy, zoo-like place. Most of the time I was on there, probably 25, 26, 27 was when it was at its best and worst. Yeah, spoke to a lot of lads who were on there at the time. Said some of the officers on there were dogs, which they probably were. However, we're not here to talk about them today. Me and Nobby Nobbler. Oh, it is windy. I'm going to stay down this end, guys. Me and Nobby Nobbler. He was an ex-squaddy. He was a big unit when I first started on there. Probably equal to me in weight. You know, very athletic, 16 stone. Yeah, I'm lying. I've always been about 18 and a half stone. He was similar. He was about 6'3". So he carried it better than me. Or maybe he didn't, I don't know. Anyway, we had a good laugh together. This is a little story. It's about someone who harmed themselves. I've talked about self-harm quite a lot in my career. I've seen a lot of self-harm. Some people get triggered by it. You know, if you use the word manipulation. Well, I've seen both sides of it. I've seen plenty of manipulation in prison. And I've seen people who harm themselves because of childhood trauma. Plenty of them as well. So my scale of self-harm, I ain't said this for a long time. We've got a few new people in the channel. 1 to 10. A 1 to 3, they're people who definitely use it for manipulation. Vast majority of people in prison who self-harm are using it for manipulation, particularly in the latter or the last couple of 3 years. Prison's changed. People used to have a sort of code of conduct. If you borrowed off someone and didn't pay them back, you'd expect a good hiding. Now people will self-harm, in order to get off the wing and tell officers that, yeah, that guy's after me, so they get in trouble and get off the wing. So that's all gone now, that sort of code of conduct. So yeah, 1 to 3, vast majority of prisoners. 4 to 8, the latter end, you know, 7 or 8, they're people who self-harm, shall we say, quite hard. You can imagine what I'm talking about there. Not everyone who self-harms, it's visible. A lot of people, we have one lad who had been self-harming since a very early age. He used to cut his chest, you know. He always had it covered up, nowhere else on his body. Some were quite obvious, some were quite brutal, some required medical intervention. You know, they would be nasty wounds and the things like that. Yeah, the latter end, 7 or 8, obviously there's always a risk of infection. The people who come into the 4 to 8 category will be people who wouldn't necessarily tell you were harming. There was a lad on K-wing, I remember him really well. He used to cut himself quite bad. He'd do it in private, and then he might well come to me and ask me to get a nurse just to dress his wound. He wasn't asking for anything, he didn't want anything, it was relief. So I understand that, I understand why some people do it. Anita quite recently, you know, the last struggles with mental health, mental illness, the self-harm for her, you know, hopefully would stop a crisis. She'd cut herself and it'd stop a crisis, bless her. If it was more serious, she'd move on to that, or move on from that, to try and harm herself in a more serious way, i.e. kill herself. So I've got an understanding, I'm not unsympathetic. Facts are facts though, guys. You know, the figures now that come about for self-harm is up, so many cases. Well, it needs breaking down, it means nothing. If I borrow off you, I have no means to pay you back, and I scratch my arm in order to get off the wing and bubble you to the staff, yeah, that's different to someone who does it in private or seriously wants to harm themselves. 9 and 10s. Again, I met a couple of guys who were 9 and 10, no marks on the body, used to bleed the veins, not arteries, veins. Both of them did the same in their arm. If they didn't have anything to do it with, they'd use their nails, and both of them guys would bloodlet to the extent where they would be in danger of dying and need a blood transfusion. One of them was a foreign national prisoner. He did it because once he came under the Mental Health Act, he couldn't be deported anymore. He was illegally in this country. He's probably still floating about in the system now. You know, so his alternative to going back to his native country, as it were, was to get himself sectioned and reside under the Mental Health Act in prison and forensic units. The other lad was just in a really bad place. Again, neither of them two guys asked for anything. One, obviously, you could say manipulate the system because he wasn't getting deported. The other would just do it. You know, if you pissed him off, he'd do it. He didn't gain anything from it. It could be an inconvenience, or at worst, you know, put you in a situation where you're having to save his life. I don't mean at worst like that, you know, preserve life, prison officer, always at the forefront. So, moving swiftly on, Nobby Nobbler. We're on K-wing. We had a lad who came from healthcare, superficial scratches I would name him. He was a 1 to 3. He was a foreign national prisoner, he'd been on healthcare. K-wing was a scary place, yeah. Healthcare at that time had about 40 beds, that was too many. It would change, I'll talk about that later. But he come to K-wing, that's where he should be. You know, because you self-harm, everyone who self-harms on the out's not in hospital. This lad, you know, wanted to stay on there because there were less people. Like I said, K-wing was intimidating. People used to come onto G-wing, well managed, a lot of bang up, especially first timers. Geez, you walk onto K-wing in the day, it was like a zoo. I remember when I first come up there, you know, just, it was like, wow. First evening duty, which would be after 6 o'clock, open prisoners up, serve meals, 6 while 8, everybody out, running about, shouting, yeah? We had a certain amount of control. We didn't let people associate on the landings, in cell, music not too loud, the lighting was crap, lighting was Victorian, you know, and you'd look, the atmosphere was electric. So yeah, people would be scared. So we got this lad, he was on the twos landing next to the office. Keep an eye on him. He was on an ACT document. ACT, care in custody and teamwork. Suicide and self-harm document. Anyway, Nobby Nobbler, do you want a brew? One of many over 3.5 years. Yes, please. Not going to turn down a brew. Let me tell you now, I didn't have a tea belly. On K-Wing, you might get a couple of brews a day. Yeah? So, there was a lot happening. It was a busy wing. Yeah, he's seen me talking to myself plenty. Anyway, Nobby Nobbler takes off to make a brew. I has a peep in. The lad's in the corner. Yeah, he's got a razor blade or something. He is scratching his arm. When I say scratching again, you know, I'm not, what's the word? They were scratches, yeah? They weren't any life-threatening, they weren't cuts. He was scratching himself, lots of little scratches. Yeah, what he was doing, he didn't see me, got his hand in the sink, and he was putting water on it. The floor looked like it was covered in claret. So I moves back to the stairs, yeah? Nobby Nobbler comes with a brew, gives me a brew, I've got my brew, we're having a chat. He says, have you checked on him? I says, nah. So he walks on, Nobby Nobbler, has a look in. You can imagine what he said. He says, you're not right, you Samworth. I says, what? That's a lot of paperwork he had to do, instant report and the like, yeah? He says, I'm not taking him to healthcare now, we'll finish his brew and take him, yeah? He's not bleeding to death, the superficial scratches, all right? Yeah, I did care about people. We're drinking his brew, another officer comes on. She brought this lad to us a couple hours early. Where did you put him? In there, is he okay? Yeah, he's okay. She looks in. Oh my God, screams, runs over, presses the alarm bell. Nobby Nobbler again looks at me. That was our brew done. We took him back to healthcare. Yeah? There you go, Nobby Nobbler. You might not find that amusing. I did. It was the look on his face. And it's that one-upmanship. That's what you're at all the time. Yeah? Me and him, we competed for 3.5 years to get one over each other. But he was a good lad. He was a good officer. He was classed as an alpha male, but I'll tell you now, he had a care inside, that lad. Big squaddy, 18 stone. When he left the job, he was unwell. He was down to about 12 stone. He looked ill. But I'm glad he left the job, because if he'd have stayed in it, it would have killed him. Okay, guys. Humorous stories tomorrow. I'll put together a little vlog. A longer vlog on Coroner's Court on Sunday. A few people have contacted me who are going to help me. I've got a guy coming Monday. Going to show me how to use YouTube Studio. And I've got some interviews to do next week. As of yet, I've no idea how to string clips together or anything else, but I will get there, yeah? So stick with it. Comments, as always, amazing. Bernice in Canada, lovely picture. Look really well in your hoodie. All the best to you and your nephew. All the best to everyone else, especially them people I'm speaking to right now, or not in the best place. So thanks for coming. Al City, parting shot as always. Or maybe. Oi, kidder, sit down. Sit. Show me you're obedient. Don't then. Go on. See you later, guys. Cheers.